the sexiest things that I've had with a partner when I first was in this work, before I moved into this line, is like,
Hey, Dave here from the Breakfast with Manny podcast, which comes from when my co host Emmanuel, also known as Manny, and I used to meet regularly for breakfast. When we were discussing the shifting landscape of manhood, mostly by sharing our experiences and our struggles, as well as my coaching courses and my entrepreneurial experience, we realized many men could benefit from discussing these topics. So, Breakfast with Manny is going to explore the unseen patterns that sabotage men from realizing their potential, healing, and getting the life, sex, career, and health they want, leading to a healthy masculine life. All right, welcome everybody. So welcome to another episode of Breakfast with Manny. I'm your host, Dave, and I'm here strangely with Manny. Hey Manny, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing phenomenal. Very happy to be here, and I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yeah, and hello Ranetha, how are you?
oh, I'm doing so amazing.
Awesome. We're
So
super
wonderful.
happy to have you. Yeah. So Ranetha Perera is with us today to talk about interplay of the sexes and intimacy and masculinity and all kinds of fun things around sexuality. Um,
Mm,
Renitha's an intimacy and somatic coach, but Renitha, could you give our listeners maybe a little more depth about yourself before we even start? If that's okay.
sure. So I have loved working with men and women around their intimacy. So a lot of people think intimacy is just sexuality, but it's everything. It's connection to people, it's connection to self, it's connection to others, and it just lights me up. And a lot of what I do is focusing on sexuality because that is the most taboo, scary thing for so many people. And yeah, it's something that I've been doing for the last, I think, 7 years. So
Okay.
something, yeah. Mhm.
Amazing. Cool. So
Mm,
yeah, we're here to dive in. One of the questions we do ask every guest, because Breakfast with Manny is sort of built a little bit around healthy masculinity and what does it mean in
mm.
today's world and how can we be healthy men? And if I say the term healthy masculinity, what comes to mind for you or a definition?
A man that's well-rounded in all of these edges. So from the, yeah, from everything that you think of as a man in their, cutting down a tree to being of service, but then also someone that is like taken in and really like embodied the feminine side as well. So
So
it's like
balance, yeah.
well-rounded. Yeah, well-rounded.
I like that. So I'll
Mm,
ask one more question before I go to Manny, but I'd like to ask you like state of the union in terms of the of sex and we are generally leaning towards more heterosexual given our Manny and I are heterosexual men. We don't have experience in the homosexual realm, but between the sexes, where are we
mhm.
today? Like where do you think we are with sex and the sexes right now, 2024?
Where are we in the sexes?
Yeah, like sex between the sexes.
Mm.
Like where are we?
I think we've come a long way. Like and it's been such a flip in the last few years, like with the whole Me Too movement. I feel like yeah, men have really shifted and changed. Like no longer is it the man that's being just the provider. It's like women are also coming into play with that. But I feel like there has definitely been a shift since this Me Too movement has come that men are a bit more afraid. So around
Right.
sex, what I'm noticing is either men are a bit more timid or they're wanting something but unsure of how to say it and
Mm,
unsure of how to communicate it. And there's a bit more like leaning back instead of being able to really claim what they desire and what they want because there's fear of what that means and what happens. So there's such a big desire for so much. And in the age of being able to watch porn, like and get
yeah.
connected to
Yeah.
porn at any moment, it's like there's a lot of stimulation and real disconnect from the body and sensation.
Mm,
Just going to change this.
yeah, no problem. So, well, we'll just wait till you're set up.
Dave, by the way, based on what Ranetha is saying, it's pretty interesting because you and I have discussed about also seeing a change, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's true that the Me Too movement has created some sort of
Mm.
sensation of being very careful, being sometimes scared, um, and that of course affecting the effect that the playfulness that it has to be.
Mm.
I think it has evolved in a to some extent in a positive way, as in educating men on things that before were deemed
Absolutely.
acceptable and that
Yes.
now are more conscious, but it has also maybe created a drawback which
Yes.
is kind of like that chemistry between both of them. Ranetha, can you maybe just
Yeah.
explain to us a little bit more about things you're hearing from? I don't know if most of the clients you work for, are they women or are they men? What do you hear
I mean,
the most?
in right now it's more men, but I've had a lot of women also come through. So what I've noticed is, you know, men that are just like having these desires and these cravings and this hunger, but they're so afraid to talk to their partners or girlfriends or prospects, like these
Yeah.
women that they're interested in or attracted to. And what happens is that they play this nice guy. I've got to be a nice guy to show up in the world in a particular way so that I'm not a predator. Like they're so afraid of being a predator or deemed a rapist, you know? But what happens is when those desires aren't being able to be met in a healthy way, they leak out and they come
Yeah.
out in passive aggressiveness. And then all of a sudden we have all these amazing men that are like, why don't these women like me? I'm the nice guy. And then
Yeah.
that's actually a bit more scary and a bit more terrifying for the world, because then it just, all of this energy comes out in these sideways ways. And then there's even more, what I've seen is like desires and kinks come out even more so. And people then reach out to watch and connect with intimacy and watch porn. And they're like, this is how I want to go down. And it's like what they're stimulated by gets even harder and harder, because now they're unable to really create this dominance or this polarity. And so what they're being stimulated by, generally, not always, but what I've found is that, yeah, it just gets harder and harder and harder. And the more stimulus you watch, it's like the brain takes on
Yeah.
more. So it's just this whole rotating pattern of what they need and what they think they want. And they think they want hard, fast sex, but really it's the same. Like men are just desiring intimacy. They're desiring to be held. They're desiring to be nurtured, as well as showing that they are dominant. You know, it's a natural
Mm-hmm.
role for them, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not given the opportunity, or they're not feeling like they can ask what they want.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, certainly in my era and my age, like I've gone
Mm,
through the several decades and so I guess my question, I do have a question around that would be
mm-hmm.
any thoughts on how men can balance desire and like wanting and showing that to a woman and consent? Because
Sure,
consent's so important.
for
Yet
sure.
if you do it in the wrong way, in a really, really like small way, then it kills chemistry. So how do you
Yeah.
balance that? How do you balance that?
I think firstly, like the first step would be a man getting connected more to themselves. So
Yeah.
it's like instead
Yeah.
of needing this external validation, it's like, how can we validate ourselves and fill our cups, and, bringing a self pleasure practice and like a juicy practice, not just watching porn, but really becoming so aware of their body and all of their yeses and nos and every like cell of being when it turns into joy and pleasure. And then
Yeah.
from there, when they're out with the woman, they'll start to notice the nuances of if a woman is interested, attracted, like your charisma can turn on more, because you're not looking at this woman of like, oh my God, she's so gorgeous, she's so
Right.
beautiful, I want to take her home. There's not
Yeah.
that like that experience and that energy, where that's what a lot of women are really repelled by, because they can feel a man is not just there for genuine connection, they're there for
Right.
more. Or it's like they can feel something not incongruence. And
Mhm.
that's where it's like, oh gosh, this man is going to try and take from me or something. And that's where, so from there, once that energy is calmed, it's like being able to be really honest and be really, really truthful and coming from a place that's really grounded. I
Yeah.
love it personally when I'm on a date with a man, and my favorite thing is being for someone to tell me that they want to kiss me. I love that.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
so sexy, because it's like, yes, you can own what you want and you can be in your power and you can be in your pleasure. And yeah, absolutely. Like if I hear that and I'm already interested in you, it's like, he's going to tell me. He's not just going to try and sneak in a kiss or try and sneak in. Like a lot of people think that it's more romantic or more sexy, but actually it's like, it brings a woman so much more safety that they can
Yeah.
relax. And then all of a sudden it's like, like a woman hears, a man is listening, a man is able to communicate, a man is going to hear me and give me like, let me be open and like feel me as well. And then it's like, okay, like let's lean in. And then from there, being able to talk about desires or communicate what you want or what you find would be so amazing to be able to be created tonight.
Yeah. I think some of my male clients in my coaching, like they have no idea what they really want.
Mm,
They haven't really spent much time with themselves to go like, what do I
mm.
really want? But I want to go back to what you said. I think it's really important. I've made this statement in the past around like there's a way to ask with so much confidence and like somatic dignity and like
Yes,
male presence to go like, can I kiss you? Like I want to kiss you. Like
yes,
versus there are the other way where it's like the hesitancy, like, could I
yeah,
approach you for a kiss? And
yes.
one can be such a turn off and one can be such a turn on, right?
Yes.
You
And
know?
even from what you just said there, Dave, like even next level to saying, can I kiss you? Is, hey, I'm really attracted to you and I'd love to kiss you.
Yeah. And I
It's like
want to
such a
kiss you.
subtle, yes, and it's such a
Yeah.
subtle difference, but there's a
Hmm.
confidence and a desire being shared, instead of even the uncertainty of, hey, can I kiss you?
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like whereas a woman wants to feel a man in his power and wants to
Yeah.
feel a man like owning his desires and claiming what he's after. And on the flip side, it's like being okay to receive a no as well, or a not right now.
Absolutely. Manny?
I have a million questions. I don't even know where to start, but let's start with one curiosity that I have about
Uh-huh.
Ranetha, what you talked about. Um, I think you said you appreciate, and it seems like you also find attractive a guy who can own to himself a desire that he has, said
Yeah.
in a respectful way, but also confident. Would
Yes.
you say would you say women, of course not all, there's always individual cases, but in general, desire to be led more than maybe they say so in specific situations, like for example, a kiss, for example, engaging and wanting to have an intimate moment?
Oh my God, absolutely. That's every woman's desire. The strongest, most confident woman will want to be able to surrender to you.
Mm.
Like, no doubt about it. Like, my background before doing the work I'm doing now is very corporate. It's like being a single independent woman was my thing, strong, independent. And what I really craved, like, I was really strong because I was taught how to be. And I can easily lean into my masculine energy to get shit done and to
Yeah.
keep things moving. And what I desire so much is to come home and be loved up on. Like, no matter how strong I am, it's like, I get to relax. I want to be led. I don't
Yeah.
want to lead. I want to feel my softness. I want to be able to surrender in. I want to know that I'm going to be cared for. And yeah, when there's a safety in my body as well for that, it's like, oh my God, I can open up. It's like for a woman, what I notice is like the more you're able to create safety for her, the more her body will open, the more like pleasure you'll be able to get, and as well she'll be able to get.
Yeah. I want to jump on that. I mean,
Mm.
I have some thoughts on this and I'll give you an example in a minute, but
Mm-hmm.
um, how do you think men can best create safety?
I think being slower,
Mm.
but there's like again, there's nuances for everything, right? Like some women want men that will just claim and take and be in their dark masculine. And underlying, like if you're wanting a longer term relationship, like that's really sexy and fiery, but creating an underlying safety around having stronger communication skills to be able to really set foundations.
Hmm.
One of the sexiest things that I've had with a partner when I first was in this work before I moved into this line is like creating a container for even the first time we were going to have intimacy. It's like,
Yeah.
what is your relationship status? What are your boundaries? What are your desires?
Yeah.
And then creating like maybe even what are your fears and being able to be really vulnerable in that. Like a lot of men are afraid to talk about that because they're like, oh, if we go into this conversation, this woman might be scared off or she might tell me she never wants to be with me. But actually, it's even more so. And I remember the first time I was with a man and I said, actually, I don't want to have penetrative sex with you tonight.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. And he looked me dead in the eye and he was like, okay, just so you know, if that changes for you tonight and you start to get really aroused and you want to have sex, no matter how much you're begging me, I'm just going to say no. And then
Mm.
we're going to schedule in a time for next time.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how much relief I had in that. like just going,
Sure.
whoa. And during that evening, I was really aroused. And there was moments that I was like, wow, maybe I am
Ooh,
open. And
yeah.
just knowing that he was going to hold that pole of integrity to his word, because that's what I wanted. It just built, again, trust. It's like that trusting piece of like, this man is his word. He's not going to override what I desire because of his needs and desires. And already my body, yeah, from then
Yeah.
onwards, it was like my body just knew I could be at ease.
Yeah. And that openness that the feminine can have, the flow, all
Yeah.
those things. Yeah, it's cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've had that experience too, where well, the one that comes to mind is my last girlfriend a while ago, like years ago, on one of our early dates was asking me if I ever had an infidelity on my wife, and I right away said
Mm,
yes. Like
mm,
I said, yeah, I did. I explained it, and she
mm.
knew, well, if he's going to say that on the first date, then I can trust him.
Yeah.
And I said to her, really, like in effect, I would rather tell you the truth and lose you than lie and
Yes.
feel terrible
Right.
about it, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know,
Because as well, like if you're going to create these lies, there is going to be an incongruence in your body
that the
that
woman's going to
you'll know.
feel, yeah.
They'll feel it. Like
Hmm.
they'll be like, I don't know what's going on and I don't know why, but somehow, like if they're in touch with their intuition,
They know.
which most are, they will know.
Hmm.
And there'll be something that is actually keeping them away rather than you just admitting, yes, this is what's happened. I did cheat on my previous partner. And, this is why, this is what I've learned, this is what I'm
Yeah.
committed to.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, it went well. Like it went really well. I think a lot of guys though, like especially nice guys, were so scared of like
Yeah.
the judgment and we
Mm-hmm.
massage, but women are very good at seeing those subtle body cues of a guy who's
Yeah.
like lying and you can just tell he's kind of stick handling.
Yes.
It's not great. It's
Again, you
really
can
not
just
great.
feel it because there's something leaky. There's
Yeah.
something not
Yeah.
quite right that you're not speaking, they're not speaking. They're like, why do I want to not be around? Or why do I not believe this person?
Yeah,
Something in
for
your
sure.
voice. Yeah. And
Yeah.
going, oh, if everything's out in the open, it's like that can't hurt you anymore. It's like
Absolutely. Yeah.
the closet's
Not a
open.
slave to it anymore. Yeah. I
Yeah.
have another question, Manny, before we go back
Yeah.
to you. I'd like to ask you and let us know if you can answer this. Like, what would you say are some of the biggest turnoffs or mistakes guys make when it comes to
Hmm.
sex?
When it comes to sex, can you be more specific in what you're asking
Yeah.
around sex?
So are there patterns that you've seen over your experiences or from your clients where it's like um, something guys do to kill chemistry? They don't understand creating chemistry and they kind of kill it. When we know lying's one of them, like we already identified that, for example. But is there something physical or something that men do as a bit of a pattern that you see that might be a bit of a turnoff or might be a don't?
I can't think of 10 or so don't right now, but I can think of like what they can do better, like
There you go.
creating
Sure.
a more delicious environment, creating
Okay.
like a mood, a tone, like creating a space where it's
Mm,
lush. Like if a woman
mm,
can come into a space and it's beautiful and gorgeous and there's beautiful smells, there's beautiful like lights on, there's like music playing, it's already like, wow, okay, this man has taken the time. And sure, like sometimes it's faster,
yeah,
but you can
sure.
still create moments. And also then guiding a woman into a place of like leading, again, leading, being led. This is
Mm,
what we're going to do. You can even tell a woman what you're going to do and what your desires are to do to her. And it will drive her insane, like in a good way, in a really
in a good
positive
way.
way,
Okay. Okay.
as well as like being able to ask her for what she wants. Like, I think some men are so afraid because, again, a lot of the culture of sex and sexuality learned by men, also by women, is watching porn. And they
Yeah.
go, oh, we have to know. And this is what looks sexy. But the thing is around porn is it doesn't actually give like 90% of your experience. There's no conversation, there's no communication. You don't have all the silly moments in between where someone might
Yeah.
fart or there might be creeping or there might be like
Right.
getting up to go to the bathroom or getting up to get snacks. So it's remembering, it's like, oh, wow, let's have a conversation. Let's create this intimacy as a co-creation. It doesn't need to be a man that's like, oh, I'm going to do this and
Yeah.
it's going to look sexy. And then I'm going to turn the
Yeah.
room around. This is going to be sexy. And hey,
Right.
you're going to do this and I'm going to do whatever. It's like some women, there's like many different ways a woman can be in her turn on, like from, and this is a Jaya Rose, like erotic blueprints, like knowing if
Right.
she's
Right.
more in her sensuality, if she's kinky, if she's
Yeah.
sexual, if she's all of it, or she's energetic, and being able to play with all of them. It's like, as a man, if you're wanting a woman to open, like finding the nuances for her, or even halfway through intimacy, asking, what else do you want? My favorite question is, how can I make this 10% more pleasurable for you?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because it's not like,
Love
what
that.
else do you want? Because it's like the
Right.
mind goes into, I don't know, this is great. But if you ask someone, how can I make this 10% more pleasurable? Even if they say, this is great, ask again. How can
Okay.
I make this 10% more pleasurable?
I love that. Cool. All right, Manny, pull from your
Ranetha?
million. Pull from your millions.
So I just wanted to give you a scenario. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this, but a client, a guy who consumes more porn than water, asks you, I want to improve my sex life. Things are shitty right now. It's not working well. So do you think just cutting off porn completely is a solution or a step towards improving? Do you think there's a way in which porn can exist and kind of be still present? What do you think about, because you did talk about porn, and I've talked to guys who told me that it had a negative impact on their life. So I'm curious about your thoughts.
I think sometimes it can be good. Like, it's not like, oh, cut it out completely, which I think if you're watching it more than like drinking water, absolutely, there's an addiction pattern, right? Like anything that we're addicted to, we're probably got to come back to a balance. If we're watching it for a certain outcome, or to come in 5 seconds, or to come because we're just desperate and our body is craving it, there's something there to look at firstly. And it's like, okay, how can we wean off? Because already their stimulants of their body and their mind chemistry is going to be off center to be able to actually connect with a woman in a way that they want. Because firstly, it starts with like one video, and then it goes to 3 videos and 5 videos and 10 videos, and
Right.
it's like 2 hours, and then it's like
Yeah.
you're watching the craziest things. Again, nothing wrong. Like, I never want to yuck anyone's yum. Like, everyone has different kinks and desires and fetishes, but there's a point where it's like you're actually not connecting. You're actually in your mind somewhere else, not in your body, and not connected to your pleasure. And you can have so much more pleasure from, like, I've worked with men to have like full body orgasms where they're tingling from like their hands to their toes for like 10 minutes after they orgasm. And I don't know if you know as well, like having men trained to have full body orgasms.
Yeah.
So that's also sensation based, and you can have an orgasm without ejaculation.
Yeah.
So being able to create that. So your question was around like cutting out porn. If you're wanting to be more like multi-orgasmic, absolutely. Cutting out porn is like a step. But before that, it's like, okay, how can you wean off if you're completely in that? Because, or what else can you swap out that addiction for? Because anything that you take away, there's got to be something else healthy to come in and like slot in. Otherwise, you'll become addicted to something else unhealthy. It's like finding
I see. I see. The women that you've spoken to that watch porn, do you think they watch it um the same way men watch it? Because I feel like the feedback I get is, for us, it seems like it's very physical. It's extremely physical. Whereas I've spoken to women that care about more of the story aspect to it. Not all, of course. There's one that tell me I like physical aspect as well, but there seems like sometimes there's different ideas or visions of what creates kind of like that sense of pleasure. So I was wondering, the girls I've watched porns in general, do you think it's the same effect they're trying to get out of the videos they're looking for, or different?
I think it depends on what stage of life they're at. Because I know from when I was young and I would watch porn, it would be because I wanted to have an orgasm. It was like a stress reliever. And it's like the
Okay.
faster the better, the more sexy. And if I was to watch it, it would be like something more beautiful and sensual. It's like, just because I've grown and I kind of feel like, okay, what is fast food sex versus what is gourmet sex, and how do I want my body to feel? And in the times where I've been extremely disconnected, it can help like build body's arousal. If, in those moments of me also kind of being lazy, because being able to build your own arousal is so much more pleasurable. It's more gourmet. You feel more. I definitely feel more. And it's just like so much more orgasmic for me. Whereas
Cool.
like, yeah, porn, it can be based on the story and it can be based on sensuality. But again, like we talked about those erotic blueprints. It's like, what are people looking for? Are they looking for more kinky play and they're wanting to get inspiration, or are there desires that they're not speaking out that they're getting to watch and witness and explore in that way? And in that sense, it's like, okay, how can we explore that instead of like getting off to online videos, that aren't real?
I love what you said about fast food versus gourmet, because one of the issues that I've worked with a few men and I've seen is when they masturbate, they do it
Mm.
fast and quick. And they're
Mm-hmm.
literally then training their body to be fast. And they, many, not all, but many of those men have trouble with staying
Yes.
power because they've trained their body
Yes.
to
Yes.
to get it over with almost,
Yes.
And I'm assuming that's where a lot of pleasure practices come in. And I've done some of that with some of my clients too, where it's just like slow the
Yes.
fuck down, like with
Yeah.
yourself,
Mm-hmm.
go slow.
Everything. Yeah. It's a big
It's,
practice, and it's something that I'm currently putting together. It's called Slow Pleasure for me.
oh,
And it's
cool.
like a whole like curriculum of like actually how to be slower.
Yeah,
And not because, my whole motto is more, but what I'm realizing also is slow is more. Like if you go slower, you can feel like
yeah,
the
yeah,
sensations on your body. You can feel the air of like breath. You can feel the pleasure in like your neck. You can feel the like I've had people also like having orgasms from their nipples, like nipple play when they didn't
yeah,
have sensation there before. It's like all of a sudden you can feel more and there's more available and you can last longer as well.
yeah,
I've been in intimate situations with previous partners where we've had intimacy for 6 hours and not even
yeah,
realize the time, and being able to be rejuvenated by that energy and being like yeah, just feeling really radiant rather than exhausted.
yeah,
Going, wow, that was amazing. Let's start the day now. And I find a lot of men, there's a lot of shame around masturbation. And
yeah,
that's why it's like, okay, get it quick and done and then go. And it's again a stress reliever because in today's
yeah,
day and age, most men are on the go. They're so busy,
yeah,
they've got so much stress. And what I find again is that because so many men are more in their minds, there's like a disconnect, and like being able to ejaculate gives them sensation, gives them feeling in the body, which it's like,
yeah.
oh,
I'm
amazing.
here. Yeah,
Yeah. It's like, but
yeah,
they're unaware of that. They're not like, they're unknowingly doing that to feel, because, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm doing something that feels good. Okay. How can I get this faster? And how can I do more? Some men ejaculate 3 times a day, and it's like all of their life force is also going. Like
yeah,
ejaculation's not bad. Not like watching porn is not bad. But if you're doing it from these intention of
yeah,
something that's not as healthy or not as like revitalizing, it can be quite
yeah.
detrimental.
Yeah, I see that. I've seen that a lot in talking to a lot of guys about just, or guys that run around to like manage their nervous system, right? Just, I got to get off. I call it the get off culture a little bit. It's just like,
Mm-hmm,
oh,
mm-hmm.
I just need to like, I'm just so,
So
and
stressed.
they have
Yeah.
no way of getting into their parasympathetic nervous system. So they
Yes.
do it that way. One of the
Exactly.
things that's interesting that I did a little research on recently, and I don't mind sharing in a minute, but erectile
Mm,
dysfunction is a big thing. Performance is a big thing for men.
mm,
Do you work with men on that? Like, have you seen a lot of that as
yes.
well? Okay.
A lot of the time, what I find with men, even with premature ejaculation, like they've had women tell them something's wrong or they're coming too
Right.
fast. And again,
Right.
like what I find is that we're in an age of high stimulants, a lot of stress. A lot of the time, it is generally men that are disconnected from their body, men that aren't able to really feel comfortable. There's a lot of shame around sex or a lot of expectation around performance,
Yeah.
and a lot of anxiety as well. So then, of course, if they're in their minds anxious, it's like they're again in this loop of,
Yeah.
I've got to perform, I've got to be great. Oh God, is my cock hard? Oh God, is
Right.
she in pleasure? And all of
Right.
these things, again, in your mind and not connecting with your body and not connecting with her body or his body, depending on who they're with. Um, and when I worked with men in this, it's like a lot of the time it's slowing them down. Again, slow pleasure. And there's like different tools that we can use to like slow them down and get them into their body and feeling their body and really like savoring every moment.
Hmm.
And it's been, again, amazing seeing men from like erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation to then having really long lasting experiences and having full body orgasms.
That's amazing. That's
Mm.
cool.
Mm.
Manny?
So I just wanted to switch gears a little bit, but Ranetha, I'm just very
Please.
curious. I'm curious about a little bit about your path. So
Mm.
how did you decide to want to help other people? Did you go through experiences that made you realize you wanted to improve on maybe the experiences you had? I'm curious about your story a little bit.
So my background was very corporate. One of my past lives, I was a chartered accountant, and then I worked in talent acquisition, always for like these global multinationals. And again, go, go, go. And what I found for myself, my first experience in this work was kind of mindset work and shifting gears of I can actually have what I want instead of being boxed in. Like I worked in jobs that I was working minimum like 80 hours a week, 6 a.m. to like 10, 11 p.m., working on the weekends. And I was so stressed. My intimacy wasn't good. My connection with others, like I had really great friends, but in my intimate relationships, I was struggling. And I started off in mindset. And what I noticed was I wasn't able to have what I wanted because I was so afraid. I didn't know my value. I didn't know my body. I wasn't connected to my body. And again, I know this from hindsight, but even my view of myself was so poor. Like I couldn't say that I was beautiful. I didn't love myself. And so the people that I was attracting in were coming in, and I was having these really not great experiences because of that. And when I moved into the world of embodiment and allowed myself to really feel like the feminine archetypes, the masculine archetypes, and actually, instead of being in this like immature masculine where I was go, 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 getting stuff done, achievement, 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 next, 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 I've got to go, like being able to again slow down and go, actually, what is it that I want? I'm living a life that I was told I needed to live in, not because I wanted to, but because I thought you were meant to go to uni, get a job, work in this thing that you hated for so long. And my body was in constant stress. I was constantly anxious without realizing it. I would get to a place where I was so stressed that I would stop breathing for like a minute or so. And I took up smoking. I was a fake smoker for a little while. And then one day I remember being down with this, like my peers that were smokers, and went, I'm breathing properly. Because to take in an inhalation and going, wow, I don't need to smoke anymore. And I let that go. That like moment of realizing. But yeah, my intimacy, my sex was so disconnected. And I pushed myself to do really interesting things because I didn't feel good enough to be in a relationship or have a partnership that I was worthy of. I was like, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not good enough. My body's not like the right one. Um, I'm overweight, or I yeah, so many stories. I had so many stories about just not being good enough in so many ways. I'm too tall, my shoulders are too broad, my breasts aren't right, like yeah, all of these stories. And then so who I was attracting from that energy were men that would be so interested in me, but I wasn't interested in, or men that wanted to take from me. And I was like, okay, this is how it's going to be. And so, yeah, I started to do more embodiment work, more work around sexuality. And that for me was the area where I realized, like, wow, I am beautiful. Wow, I am amazing. It wasn't overnight. It took work, and it took getting really comfortable with my body, like being able to look my body in the mirror and say, wow, you're amazing. Wow, this is amazing. And then really like falling in love and coming into peace, and then being able to just emanate. Like even the way I stand is different to how I would have stood 5 years ago. My clothing is different because now it's like, oh, I want to look great no matter where I am. It's not for anyone else, but it's for me. It's like, how can I adorn myself? How can I love myself? How can I really value myself? And so all of these have gone into like all of my areas of life. In partnerships, it's like I have certain desires and standards and needs and wants and requirements, which everyone should have. And it's a great thing to even start thinking about, what do we want, instead of what person is coming to me and what person is attracted to me. It's like, oh, I get to choose and I get to be the creator of my life. And my initial thing was, I had amazing, like a few years ago, I started to have really amazing partnerships that taught me a lot. and then moving into the world of Tantra and kink. And yeah, just doing so much with people. Like, I find this is one of the most taboo subjects around intimacy, around relationships. And at its core, it's creating a lot more safety for people and trust and self-worth and self-love so that they can realize they can have everything they want in their partnerships, in their intimacy, in every area of life.
Awesome. Cool.
Mm.
For those of our audience that don't know about Tantra, could you just give us maybe just a short explanation around the energetic work around Tantra?
There's so much around it, and at a small snippet, it's about coming back into presence. Like, a lot of people think of Tantra as the Kama Sutra, which is like 5% of what Tantra is about. It's like coming into your body and being able to feel every single sensation, being able to get really connected to you, and then being able to connect with another person.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall theme I'm hearing from you is this connection to self, the connection to
Mm.
other, this
Mm-hmm.
intimacy. And I think it's funny, I read a lot of Osho. I don't know if you ever read Osho, but
Mm-hmm.
Osho
Yeah.
said something like most people's sex is two strangers masturbating each other.
Yes.
Right? Like you
Yes.
just rubbing, it's friction and a little bit
Yes.
of friction. And sex
Yes.
can be, I have to say, as someone who's explored a little bit more and more as I've gotten older, and breaking the myth of I've had some of the best sex I've ever had in my 50s,
Mm.
which is cool
Amazing.
and really fun. But I think people for like they generally don't understand how many layers there can be, how
Yeah.
deep it can feel. You talked about, these longer body orgasms for men. I know
Mm.
there's tons of men that have never even heard of that or considered that. So this
Yeah.
is great. This is all stuff I hope people can sort of start. I always say just start to get curious on things and start to be
Yeah.
curious about sex. So
Mm-hmm.
before I forget, and as we wrap, but I do want to mention something that I learned about, and I'm hesitant to share this, but I Breakfast with Manny is not about being cowardly. So I had my first real brush with erectile dysfunction recently. I've never
Mm-hmm.
really had a problem, but I had a
Mm-hmm.
big problem with my recent partner, and I
Mm-hmm.
learned so much. I dug into it.
Mm.
And what I just want to describe two things that really helped me that I think it's for the greater good. So it's
Mm-hmm.
embarrassing, but it is a shameful thing. Like when oh my God, my manhood is gone. Like it doesn't work. What's going
Mm.
on? And I just want to share with the guys out
Mm.
there that um, one of the things that comes up is you kind of mentioned it, but it's actually got a name. It's called spectatoring. It's
Mm-hmm.
monitoring your dick like constantly. You're like, am I hard? Am I hard now? Am I hard
Mm-hmm.
now? And so like my mind was not on the beautiful kisses from my partner. It
Mm.
was anxiety and just doing
Mm-hmm.
that. And then the other piece that I learned that I had never really considered was a lot of guys, when we talked about masturbating, they call it in this program, they call it the death grip. A lot of
Mm.
guys do the stimulation very hard when they masturbate. And then
Mm.
when they're with a partner, it's not enough. And, that's something I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to share. And,
Yeah.
like I said, it was really embarrassing at the time. Thank goodness it was a one-off. It was not a permanent thing, but I just think a vast majority of ED is the mental psychological disconnection from the
Yes.
experience and the present moment and
Yes.
disconnection from self. So
Yes.
I think that's key
Absolutely.
to bring up.
Absolutely. And also, in regards to the shame that you mentioned, a lot of men feel the shame. And what
Yeah.
the really interesting thing is, there are so many more men that you would know that have experienced ED and premature ejaculation. It's just that
Yeah.
it's not spoken about because
Nope.
people are so afraid to talk about it because they're so afraid that that will mean they're not masculine anymore. They are not like considered a man. And it's like, oh God, the one thing
Yeah.
that we're meant to do to be able to create a baby and to like give a woman pleasure and get pleasure. And now we can't do it. Who can we go
Yeah.
to? It is so common, and especially, again, in today's age where there's so much anxiety and stress and the body, like,
Cortisol. Yeah. All the cortisol
yeah,
levels are way
exactly.
up. Yeah.
Cortisol.
It's true.
And people, again, watch porn, and I kind of blame porn for some of the negative associations. Sometimes it's great for like exploring new cool things, but also it's like you see these men that are high on Viagra. So, of
Yeah.
course, they're going to be hard for a long time. It's like what I always say to men when I work with them, it's in person, online, it's like, you're allowed to be hard or soft. Like I know
Right.
that like
Right.
there's so much pleasure in men not being erect as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and that's also like something that women are learning because again, they think, oh, a man needs to be hard and come,
Yeah.
and that's how we've had good sex. It's like, no, imagine if you took that goal off the table and you just got to have pleasure. What does that look
Bingo.
like?
Bingo.
You know, there's a
Yeah.
whole world, there's a whole spectrum of pleasure. It's like, and to be able to explore it, and even setting sometimes like the container or the evening saying, hey, my game or what we're going to explore tonight is not having an orgasm. And
Yeah.
how much
Yeah.
pleasure can we experience?
Yeah.
And what can we do? And then all of a sudden, with that boundary and that constraint, it's like the mind gets to play in it. It's like, oh, okay, all right, I'm going to tease you.
Perfect.
And there's, yeah, like you're
Yeah.
knowing I'm not going to do this is like, what else is possible? Because all of a
Yeah.
sudden, this one thing that we think and we go to is like taken off. It's like, let's be creative.
Yeah, I love that. Before I go to Manny, if to you for maybe a last question or two, but I do want to mention that I did mention it to a couple of guys and they were like totally like, yeah, that happens. So what? And
Mm-hmm.
because I hadn't experienced it before, I did kind of freak
Mm-hmm.
out and
Mm.
I wanted to crawl in a hole. Like I wanted to just like,
Yeah.
I could have hid under the bed. Like I was like, oh God. And like I did talk to a couple of guys. They're like, yeah, totally. That happens. What are you worried about? So that
Yeah.
was kind of interesting. The normalizing effect was really, really
Mm-hmm.
reassuring, you know? So
Yeah. It's like, let's make it normal. It's just something that happens in
it
the body.
happens.
It
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
It's not like there's anything wrong with you. It's just like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And I get it. Like in the moment when you're wanting
Yeah. Yeah.
something to happen and it's not, it can be frustrating, but being really
Sure.
compassionate and being kind will
Yeah.
help you and your body so much more.
Yeah, and I will say my partner was very understanding as well, very
Mm,
reassuring, very whatever.
hmm.
We're
Oh,
new.
amazing.
She was great. Like that really
Hmm.
helped. So yeah. So
Hmm.
Manny, a last question from you, and then I have one more question. Have you
A
got one?
last question.
Hit us
Yeah,
up.
of course, I have a bunch, but Ranetha, for our spectators, for our guys listening to this,
Uh-huh.
who are like intrigued, and they want to take their sex life to the next level, what is something that you could recommend that could maybe initiate them to want to be maybe more present and enjoy their sex life more?
Hmm. Mhm. I would create more play and create more fun. Sometimes
Yeah.
a lot of men are really serious about it or get into the sex or get into their mind about it. Like
Yeah.
maybe for 5 minutes every day, put on a song and purposely like just touch your whole body and see what it feels like. Breathe with your whole body. And then when you're in intimate settings, like look at other ways that you can have pleasure without having penetrative sex. It's like slowing it down. I keep saying it, it's like slow pleasure. Create
Yeah.
slow pleasure because yeah, men are always so surprised with what they enjoy. Always. It's like all of a sudden a whole world is open to them. Yeah.
Love that. Cool. So that was my question too, Manny. So good job. Awesome. Same wavelength. So Renita, this has been great. How can people reach you if they're interested in discussing, maybe talking to you about the intimacy work that you do and the somatic work that you do? What's the best way to sort of connect with you?
Right now, my website is being redone. So yeah, getting in touch with me via Instagram would be the
Instagram?
best.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be the best way. And I can give you my website and Instagram details, Ranetha.Perera. And yeah, we can go from there. If there's particular things
cool.
you're wanting to discuss and explore or just expand pleasure. I'm so about everyone in the
Mm,
world being in more pleasure in life. I find when you're able to really cultivate that, it's like, you're more magnetic in the world.
yeah,
Like, and I know as well, like sometimes it's like the dry spells of like stress to then you get to have the four orgasms in the morning. And it's like, oh my God. And just not coming from a place of I need to do it. It's like, oh, I get to enjoy my life.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm about
It's a
that.
lot juicier, that's for sure. So, look,
Absolutely.
can't thank you enough. This was great. Thank you. And Manny, thank you to everyone out there. I hope you enjoyed this. You know, it's just a deeper exploration of
Likewise.
our bodies, our pleasures, our
Yes,
life's so
likewise.
stressful, right? And so, we'll sign off and thanks everybody very much. And don't forget to
Mm,
subscribe. That's a big one.
yes. Oh
And
my God.
thanks again, Manny. And thanks, Renita. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Ranetha.
man.
Thank you for
Thanks,
coming. It
Dave.
was great.
Oh my
All
God,
right.
so much fun. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.